So I would appreciate if you could all keep your microphones on mute, please, so that we can have the best audio quality with the speakers. We would also like everybody to be as engaged as possible and to provide feedback. So throughout the session, I'll just be reminding everyone to keep adding questions and comments, which we will get to towards the end of our session. You'll be able to do that through the chat box that's available in the three-dotted More button. And finally, we would love to get to know you more. Obviously, we have your names as you registered, but if you would like to share who you are, where you're from, organization or country, and what you do, please feel free to go ahead and chat with your colleagues on the webinar today. So today's webinar is organized under the umbrella of the Change Project. It is one of several that we will be hosting in the coming 3 years for the duration of the Change Project. And the format we'll go over today is to arrive at about a 60-minute, potentially a little bit more, but we'll try to aim for a 60-minute session today. First, I will start with some remarks, as I'm doing right now. Then we will hand over to ENGSO, who is the leader of the consortium that is delivering the Change Project, to give us an overview of what the Change Project is and where we are today with it. After that, we will dive into a moderated discussion with our guest today. And finally, we will take any questions or comments that you have input into the chat box, and we'll conclude with some final remarks. So a little bit more about myself. As I mentioned, my name is Hisham Shehabi. Our company, N3xt Sports, specializes in end-to-end digital and data transformation in the sports industry. We work with leagues, federations, clubs, and event organizers to modernize and future-proof them in the rapidly changing landscape. We're really proud to be part of the Change Project and to work alongside all of the partners, which you will learn about in just a few moments. Today, we're here to talk about an important topic that's impacting the sports industry from the whole sports pyramid, from grassroots to elite, and that is data. And I'll be talking about this topic with our guest today, Tina Amitsbøl Iefjø, born and raised in Denmark and a child of the Danish sports community. She has a long digital experience within different roles, from managing large digital platform projects to being a data analyst at an e-commerce platform and being also a UX designer. Tina is a former player of the Danish national water polo team, and she brings a unique knowledge about sports and life as an athlete, which she combines with her digital mindset to add value to the project she works on. Tina's recent post was as head of digital at the Danish John Deere dealer, and she is now working as a digital strategy consultant at the National Olympic Committee and Sports Confederation of Denmark, short DIF. Thank you for making the time to be with us today, Tina. We will dive into a moderated session with Tina shortly, but before that, I would like to hand over to Lovisa Broms, project coordinator at ENGSO, to give everyone a brief overview of the Change Project and where we are in this multi-year project. Lovisa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Hisham. Lovely being here. Lovely seeing so many of you here. I'm just trying to get, okay, I think you can see my screen now, the shared screen, I hope. Yes. So welcome very much to this webinar. My name is Lovisa Broms, and I'm working as a project manager for the Change Project. And I would like to introduce you a little bit to this project before we kick off with this very nice session we have planned for you this morning. And the project is funded by Erasmus Plus in the sport chapter. And we actually have a background project for this Change Project. So this is actually a prolongation or a follow-up project to a previous project that ENGSO has been leading, which is called the CHAMP project. And as you see here on the slide, the CHAMP project was aiming to give the sport movement innovative tools and education for modernization and offering fresh insights of current trends and solutions for physical activity promotion. And one of the one of the aims with this project was also to give something back to the sports community. So we have currently on the ENGSO education website, we have a really nice online training for sport clubs and sport organizations who are sort of curious to dive into the topic of innovation and so on. So I can really recommend you to go into this website if you're interested and check out more about the CHAMP project. But today we are definitely focusing on the change project, and we really realized during the CHAMP project that we need to move forward with the topic of innovation and sports, and specifically then innovation and grassroots sports. So that's why we chose to write this project and engage with a number of partners here. And as you see here, the aim of the Change project is to develop an educational program on innovation and change management within the organized sports movement. So we're focusing on mainly the main target group is sports umbrella organizations, but we also look wider into the sports community, of course, to offer knowledge, research, also practices into the topic of change management. And as you see here, we are focusing on 3 different sort of topics, main topics, and that's digitalization. We're covering that definitely today. And we also have inclusion engagement, and then also sustainability. So there will come more webinars focusing on these different areas. So I really hope that you will follow us in the coming years here. And this project wouldn't be possible without the partners, of course. And here you see the logos of the 11 partners involved in this project. So we have 11 partners from 9 different countries, which is, well, ENGSO is the leader of the project, but then we also have a number of sports umbrella organizations such as DIF. Tina, you're representing them today. We also have a research partner and expert partners. And we will definitely make sure to introduce you to many of our partners through this series of webinars that we will arrange. Number of objectives that we're taking on with this project. So we are definitely doing some research, some background research on the sports movement in Europe in relation to innovation and change management. We are also building a hub of experts within these topics. So we're involving sport organizations directly, but also experts from different organizations. So we're really proud of this setup because we really believe that to be able to develop sports, we cannot only look inwards in sports. We're doing magical things within the grassroots sports scenes. I know there's so many organizations doing so many good things, but it is also good to look a little bit outwards and to reach experts who are maybe a little bit outside of the sports setting as well. And then the plan is to build and implement an interactive toolkit offering an education on innovation and change management for sports umbrella organizations. And then also we will, the plan is that this project will really be sustainable in that sense, that we will build a hub of change management experts within the grassroots sports that can live longer than the project. So that's a really, really important part here of this project. Yeah, here you see the timeline. We don't need to go deeper into that. And we started the project in 2022 with a kickoff meeting in October. And here you see a couple of the activities that were done already in 2022. So we really kicked off the project here already. And then for this year, we have a number of different partner and expert group meetings. We will do some research. We will also have change workshops. So we will meet the target groups where they are. So we will have workshops with sport organizations, really discussing with the target group directly, because one really, really important part of this project is not to only talk about the target group, but really interact. So we have an approach here in this project, and we will already from the start of the project meet meet grassroots sports organizations, discuss with them what are your needs, how can we support you in this project to support you in your coming years of work and so on. And then we will have a number of change webinars as we have today, and also podcasts. And then we will start develop the change project toolbox already here during this year. And yeah, I can really advise you to go into the website. We already have a website for the project. So it's engsoeducation.eu/change. And thank you all again for being here. And I will hand over the word again to you, Hisham.
Thank you so much, Lovisa. Great to hear about the project. And as with all multi-year projects, it goes through many evolutions. So you'll want to hear back on every webinar about what we're doing and the latest updates. So make sure to, as you can see, some QR codes behind some of our team members. Those will lead you to the websites, and our team is also putting them into the chat box. Yeah. As a reminder, again, please ask your questions, provide your comments, your links, your own use cases and case studies, so that we can share them with everyone, and so that we can dive into them as well with Tina. So without further ado, Tina, let's dive into our conversation. Yeah, so we have had the pleasure of discussing already a few times together in preparation for this webinar about data. Yeah, and data's importance in the sports industry, the topics around data ownership, the technologies needed, the people and culture related to data in sports organizations. So we have a lot to unpack here, and let's try to give our participants as much as possible in the next 30 minutes or so. So I'll start off very high level, Tina, with like the question of why is data a strategic topic for DIF today?
Yep. Hello, everybody. Yeah, that's a good and a big and important question. First of all, it's important because that makes better for us to give better experiences to the people in Denmark involved in sports. We have for the professional athletes, the ones that are competing in the Olympics and so on and so forth, we have been using data for a long time, mostly about the performances, and have had analysts and so on. We still have so data. The use of data is not used. It's not used to them in that field, but in kind of the other thing about the kids doing sports and all of the rest of us that are doing it in our spare time and so on, we haven't had that much data. We do have a lot of data, but it is data that we have had from questionnaires and so on. So we don't really have live data. We don't have data on the individuals that we have signed up in the clubs. So and that makes it hard for us to see if we are, for example, are we good at recruiting new members to our clubs, or are we actually good at keeping them? We don't really know that. We have one number coming once a year, but that is one number, and it's updated at that time. So 4 months later, we don't really know if that's the same, and we don't know if it's the same people. And also we have an idea. We know the sports in Denmark, and we have an idea, but we don't really have any data on how many people do we have that are involved in more than one sport. So I guess could be that we have a lot of kids, for example, that they both play badminton and they play football. That is kind of an idea and a feeling that we have, but we don't really know. So that is why it's a strategic thing for us in DIF, and this is why we have kind of set speed on this to be much more data driven. But again, as you know, data should not be the only answer. We should still use our gut feelings and still see what's going on around this. So, but we just want to be able to to make better activities and improve on our activities and improve on our sports and our type of sports combinations and so on and so forth by the use of data.
Fantastic. Yeah, so it's a good insight you mentioned, because indeed, while we're all in the business of getting more people moving, the data we have on people moving is very low, you know, and it's come down to many reasons, you know, but in the last few years, digitalization has accelerated. COVID has been a catalyst, many say, for digitalization, which has caused a lot of sports organizations to prioritize this question now, you know. So within DIF, how did you come out with the insights that you just mentioned? And how did you, let's say, start to organize yourselves to tackle the questions that you're trying to answer about data and how to acquire it and how to be a more data-driven organization?
Yeah, as you mentioned, that COVID just kind of forced us into taking huge steps in terms of digitalization and use of data and so on. And the same comes to us. What we have done is that we is kind of the organization with a lot of federations underneath us. So meaning all the sports federations are a member of DIF in Denmark. So we are kind of the umbrella organization above them. So everything we do in DIF is actually grown out of our federation. So they are what they want and what they need. That's basically what we do. So I think maybe a year and a half ago, I wasn't in DIF back then, but they started looking at what can we do? How can we be better at working with data and what data do we need actually to be better at this, and how can we be more digital in the sports federations in Denmark? So we had a new digital strategy, and we have kind of two steps in that, or two roads. We have one where I have two colleagues that are digital advisors, and they help all of the federations in working with digital tools, platforms, so on and so forth. And then we have this data project where we want to collect data on all our members, our volunteers, coaches, so on and so forth, on individuals, so that we can actually use the data to know what's going on, basically. So that is what we want to do, and that is what I'm working on now. So this is a huge cooperation between the federations under DIF, and we are working together towards having a sports ID, basically, so that everybody that is a member of the sports club here in Denmark has one sport ID, and that ID kind of follows you all through your life and between the different sports. And then, of course, underneath you will have your data in that particular sport. But that will kind of help us to also see the movements, and we can help people, as you see it. Yeah, now my background comes also from web shops. You want to be personalized. You want to help people to find the next best good product based on what you bought before. And we want to do the same thing. If people are moving, we have a lot of students here in Denmark, and you have to move to the bigger cities. And then we want to help them to get into the sport when they come to a new city, and also kids growing up, wanting to do something else, or grow adults and so on. But with the data, we can actually help them to find the next sports and to keep people in sports. That is the main goal, and be much better at it. Thank you.
Great insights, Tina. In terms of, so a term that we use a lot in our project is the data literacy or data maturity of an organization. Yeah, and understanding, you mentioned that you had developed a strategy already. To arrive at that point, were you in a position as DIF to assess or understand the existing context of your stakeholders? Like, were you able to group them in terms of their data maturity or their digital maturity? And if you could tell us a little bit more about the journey to become more data savvy or data knowledgeable within DIF, but also the ecosystem of DIF.
Yeah, we are not. We still have a long way to go, to be honest. We are working towards having everybody having one sports ID. Today we have a lot of members data. We have members data in all of our clubs, but it's in very different formats. Some have them in some platforms, some have them in platforms that they have developed themselves. Some even have them on paper. Also, as you know, we have the sports clubs are in very different sizes. We have the huge ones that are also having a professional department. They are run professionally, and so they have this data and they're very much mature and they're working with it already. But we also have the other clubs that is mostly run by volunteers. And the volunteers, they're there because they love the sport, and they're there because they want to be involved in the sport, and they're not necessarily there because they have a digital background and they don't really have the time. So that is also one of our jobs. It is to help them to be able to work with the data and be able to be much more mature in that way. And that is one of our huge jobs, is to help them in this direction. Because if you are in volunteering and you are volunteering because of the sport and because of that is where you want to be. So whatever we can do to make that job easier, that is what we want to do. But as I said, we do have a lot of data. We just have it in very different formats and in very different places. So one of the tasks in this project is also to get it kind of centralized so that we can make sure that it comes out in a way that you can actually work with it.
Fantastic. I see some questions coming through, so please continue to do so. We'll tackle them either throughout the conversation or towards the end of the session. Tina, one thing that is kind of prevalent in the discussion about data today is privacy and ownership and the governance of data.
Yeah.
As you are leading, let's say, the digital strategy for the sports ecosystem in Denmark and facilitating it and coordinating it, how are you guys looking at this question? How are you dealing with the question of data privacy, data governance, especially now that you're thinking of this sports ID, as you mentioned?
Yeah, that is actually a big question, because we need to take care of the privacy, and that is one of my main topics, is that it is not anyone's data other than the user itself. It is always the user's data, and we want to keep it that way. And also, we have been talking less as a natural thing about data also has a value, and we can use it in to get money for sponsors and so on. So there's a lot of use of the data, but we want to make sure and to keep the data from the users in the user's control. There are a few projects here in the EU that are EU sponsored, that are looking into building platforms where the users kind of have the data, and they can only access their own data, and they can actually, the thought is to build a platform where they can combine data from different organizations as well, from health organizations and everything else, kind of in a mix, but it's only the user that can access that. So the overall thought is to allow the user to go in and kind of mark what of my data DIF, for example, allowed to see and to use, and what data is the sports organization, and then so that we will give the control to the user itself. We are very much hoping to go in that direction, and the idea of the platforms is that me as a central person in DIF can actually go in and say, okay, but if you're a member of DIF or one of our sports, you kind of need to say yes to this amount of data, otherwise you can't be a member, because we need to know your name, for example. But that's the idea of these platforms, and they're looking very good. There are some good results from those projects. So I really, really hope that we can kind of take them in and adopt them into our platform, because it's very important. And also today, if you have a Facebook account, it's very, very, very hard to see what data you are kind of sharing and what is out there. And yeah, you might have heard of the stories about the people that are being completely shocked about the amount of data, their own data is just out there, and we don't really know.
Absolutely. Yeah, with all of our, like, we're living more and more of our lives on digital platforms, and so we leave digital breadcrumbs, you know, of all of our behaviors, our interactions, our usage, which is used in many ways. And to your point, can also be used by sports organizations to personalize their services, their communications, and so on, right? So on that topic specifically, Tina, one thing which we know DIF would be looking at is the whole population. You mentioned Sports ID, which covers everybody from youth to the elderly. How do you attract people to become, you know, sports practitioners? How do you get them back into sports? What, let's say, tools or mechanisms do you use with the power of data, let's say, to attract, let's say, the youth? How do you focus on youth, or how do you advise your sports organizations to actively engage with the youth?
Yeah, there are different ways, and I think one of the most important things is actually to be aware of how to communicate with the youth. It's easy with the kids because then you have to communicate with the parents, and but the youth, it's very important to understand how they communicate with each other, and how they communicate on the digital platforms, on the social platforms. We have just had a big report released here in Denmark where we have asked 4,000 people here in Denmark about the digital habits in terms of the sports club, and we have had in that project we had the workshops with 3-4 groups of youth, of young people in the high school, and kind of asking them how are you, what do you expect from a sports club in terms of digital tools, what would you like it to be, and what is so on, what is good, what is can be improved, and so on. And one of the things, and it was not surprising what they said, but it's a very important point to spread out there, to get out into our federations and in our sports club. But they don't use the email. They only have an email because they needed to sign up. And in terms of to attract young people to our sports clubs and so on, we need to get them kind of interested, using, for example, the SoMe channels, Instagram, TikTok, and so on. So we need to be very good at working with the content to make content that get them interested, and the content that, at least what we found out, is getting them attracted and wanting to be a part of it, is content where they can actually see that they can get into a space where they can be themselves, and where they can be a part of the social thing, because being a part of a sport is also because you want to engage socially with some people that have the same interests as you. So making content that kind of show that this is a place where you can just come and you can be yourself, and it doesn't matter if you try to swim before. We will handle that, because we are a lot of other young people that can't swim, but we really want to, for example. So kind of working with that, and that is also where data can help us, because if we can kind of use the data to see how people move around with these, especially the young people, when they move, where do they go to the football club because they played football at home? No, maybe are they just going to the clubs where all the other students are? But we can see that in the data when we have that. So a combination. very good content and the ability to create a digital atmosphere that they want to be a part of, where they can be social, and then for us behind the scenes to use the data to see how they behave and how they kind of move around and then help them that way.
Fantastic. Yeah, content is key in a let's say in the attention economy, where people are pulled left, right, and center with all kinds of let's say options to spend their time, right? So content is key in that sense, and perhaps also ensuring that they know that their peers, from their age group, are also participating in such events. So that's a great insight. I'd like to, I see some questions coming through, so I think I'll tackle some of them with you, Tina, if you don't mind. So we received a few regarding your sports ID project. Yeah. So there, I'd like to first direct you a question from Eric and then link to N3xt. So first, could it be a solution to use like the personal ID? So somebody's personal ID from Denmark, let's say, if you have like a national identifier, to actually connect all of their sports participation. And linked to that, N3xt asked the question about GDPR, which we all know is a very important topic. So how did you kind of like tackle the GDPR obstacle, let's say, in this process?
Yeah, the law here in Denmark say that we can't use our personal ID. So as a sports club or as a sports federation, we are not allowed to use our personal ID. So it is very strict here in Denmark, the use of this. In other countries, for example, in Norway, they have this sports ID, and they can use the personal ID that they have there too, to kind of check if the person is actually the one that he or she says he is. But we can't do that in Denmark. We are not allowed to. But we do have. We are kind of now we are investigating to kind of use. We have a central. All this our personal IDs are centralized in the government, state government, and we are kind of looking into to see if we can have the users and then try to ask register this list to check, please check if this user is combining the name and the address, and then we don't know anything about the personal ID. We just ask to check, can you check if a person with this name and this address is actually the right combination? If yes, then we kind of take it back and assume this is the right person. But this is what we could do in Denmark, and this is what we do because we are not allowed to use the personal ID. And then the whole GDPR, it is a good thing that we do have the GDPR, because it makes, again, our data, it takes care of us data-wise, and all the breadcrumbs that you said that we leave everywhere we go. And we it's a huge task in the project to be sure that we do everything the right way in terms of GDPR. We are looking into having a cooperation with the institutions here in Denmark that are actually in control of this to help them kind of approving on our solution and how we share and use and so on with the data before we actually build the whole foundation. So we are working in close cooperation both with lawyers and but also with this institution in Denmark.
Absolutely.
But it's not an easy task. If we could use the personal ID, sure, then it was easy. But here in Denmark we can't.
Yeah. So earlier, Tina, you mentioned that there is a lot of data that exists today, but that it is all in different places, and they're not in the same format, and they're not as interchangeable or comparable. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that means in practice, maybe giving a few examples about, like a venue, a sports venue versus a sports club versus a sports federation? What does that look like exactly?
We have, as I said, DIF is the umbrella, and under that we have 62 sports federations, and under the sports federation we have the clubs. So it's kind of a free layer, and it's out in the clubs that they have the members. And then the members are actually a member of the federation, but through the sports club. And then the federation is a member of GIF. So that is kind of the free layer that we do have. And out in the sports club, we have, as I also mentioned, we have very little clubs. They might only just have a handball team for boys age 13 or something, and then their member data is whatever the Danish Handball Federation say that they need to have in order to be a part of the tournament. So that is what they have. And then in the Danish Handball Federation, they have members data centralized, so that they know you have kind of a handball passport in order to play handball in Denmark. So that is, so we can get the members data from that passport into the centralized. But in a lot of the other sports federations, this is not the landscape. This is not how it looks. So we need to go all the way out to the clubs and help them to get into member system. We have quite a bunch of member systems in Denmark that are developed and they're implemented to handle members in a sports club. It could be a team sport. It could be individual. It could be some of the fight sports. So what we're doing now is we are starting collaborations with these platforms to get integrations with their platforms and into a centralized database, so that we can actually get the data in centralized, because we don't want to give more work out to the volunteers in the sports clubs or in the federations. We should make that life easier, and we should give them more time to work with the sports. So this is kind of what it looks like. And then of course we have sports clubs out there where we will need to help them to onboard a member system, but then that's what we have to do.
Wonderful, Tina. That's a really great point. Yeah, because there is a common misconception, is that to digitalize you need to have an army of programmers and coders, and everybody needs to be doing C++ and all that stuff, right? So in your experience so far with DIF, what is kind of like the tech knowledge and capabilities you need in-house versus those that you rely on partners for or experts outside of the sports organizations? Do you need to fully change the sports organizations to do this, or is it like just relying on partners and an ecosystem of tech related companies to do that?
We are looking in or having a strategy to use the tech environment that we have in Denmark. We have a lot of startups. We had a lot of great tech people working out there. So instead of us having a huge army, as you said, of in-house developers and so on, we are very much looking into having a cooperation with the startups and with the platforms that we have that are already working and already out there. And then our job is to make sure that it's that the integration between these points is working, and that we are in close collaboration with these, so that this is kind of what we do. We are not aiming to get a lot of developers. We are really aiming to using the experts outside of the sports, and then use the tech society that we have. We also have here in DIF, I have some colleagues that are working in an innovation lab with sports tech. So they're working very closely with the sports tech community in Denmark and also abroad internationally to get them in contact with the sports federations here in Denmark. And this is kind of the setup that we want to copy over to this project, is to work in very close cooperation with the sports tech and the other platforms that we have out there, because they are kind of the experts in these platforms. And we want to just encourage to use these new, and also the startup community. We have a good tradition of startups here in Denmark, so really really want to benefit from this as well. And then our job in DIF is to make the foundation, and then build on top of that, in cooperation with the startups and the systems out there.
Fantastic. Yeah, just a reminder to everyone to continue asking your questions. I'll have a few more for Tina that I'll ask in the next few minutes, and then would love to share some questions coming in from you guys. Yeah, so please feel free to, again, use the chat function by clicking on the 3 buttons more and clicking chat and dropping your question there. So Tina, this project, the Change project, is also a multi-year project. Yeah, and I want to touch on a little bit what DIF is doing. And it sounds like you guys there's many different work streams, many different activities, many different stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
So can you walk us a little bit through like what has been done so far in terms of like, how did you start the process? How long ago did you start it? And how long, you said you have a long way to go still, but in your current view, what's the next milestones coming up?
Yeah, we started up because the big question, and it was also one of the things that you mentioned earlier, is the maturity. How digital are we in the sports federations in Denmark? So that was kind of the first step to get an overview, to see what is the maturity out there, both in terms of digital tools and using digital tools, and also on data. And then the next step has been to see if we want to build this platform and with the sports ID, we need to know what our base data what is that? If I am a member of the sports club in Denmark, when do I become a football player or a swimmer or a windsurfer or whatever? What is the base member data that we need to use? So that was kind of the first step, to figure out when do we get sports specific. And then the next thing has been to figure out and to make sure that we do have the ecosystem out there to use, in terms of not having our own development department and building all kinds of systems. So that has been the next step, and now we are kind of confident, and we know that we can, that there are a lot of things out there. We don't have to build everything ourselves. So that was kind of the step 2. And now the next step is to build this base, this sport ID platform, and that is the next step. And as you also mentioned, and there were questions about the GDPR, there are questions about the personal use of data and all the stuff, and we need to have that in place. So that is the next milestone. And then the milestone after that is beginning to collect more data to add on top of this, to, for example, if we can have this space, then also when our young people, when they become professional athletes, then we kind of have the base data, and we can see the history from them, so that we can use that in terms of both making the sports better, but also the work with the talents and the work with the other young people and so on and so forth. So that is the data we want to add to it. And then at the end, of course, we also want to get more money to sports. So somewhere along out there, we need to look at how to use this data to make us more attractive to sponsors and so on and so forth. But that is a bit out there. We need to get the data in a place where we are confident, and then we know that we have it and that we can actually use it.
Great. There's an interesting conversation happening in the chat box, which I'd like to maybe turn into a question. Yeah. So
yeah.
You mentioned earlier the importance, or that you have lawyers involved in the process. Yeah. It seems that with the question of data, and especially data that is from the past, and the ownership of data and and you mentioned that users have the ability to choose what to include and not to include. When did you involve lawyers? Yeah, or why did you involve lawyers as did? Is it yeah, you could talk about that.
Yes, we don't really, we are not that far yet. So we haven't had lawyers involved that deep, because in order to get them involved, we really know, we have to know in details what it is that we want to build and how we want to use the data, and when are we, who is seeing, who is owning, all of those questions. We need to be able to answer them, and we are not quite there yet. So, but that is kind of a step when we are much more confident and we know much more about what exactly we want to do. So we will get to that point, but for now we have just been checking kind of, if we go on this direction, in this direction, can we do that in terms of the GDPR? What do we need to think about, and so on. So we have, for now, it's been on a kind of advisory level, and then we will kind of deep dive into this. And as I said before, we will be working in close cooperation with the institution in Denmark, who is actually handling all of these, called data tilsyner in Danish, but as well. But we need to be able to answer a bit more questions in details before we can continue on that track.
Fantastic. We have a question here. I'll start kind of bringing the audience in, Tina, yeah, with 10 minutes to go.
Yep.
So Kate Boylan is asking, what progress, interest, or data are you seeing in the environmental sustainability space? Yeah, which we can tackle it in like the question as is, or if you have some thoughts around how the current project you're doing has implications for how you plan events, how you plan venues, how you plan usage of venues, and things like that. Yeah, as you see it.
Yeah, we are indeed. We are having a few strategic tracks that we are working on over the next years and have been working on, and one of them is the environment questions and how we can actually make, for example, the big events that we have just had, the World Championships in horse riding in Organised, but we have that here in Denmark, and that was a very big event where we have really been working towards making the whole setup around it. So I have an environmental okay as we can, and the whole setup and the stadiums and so on. So we are paying very much attention to this, and going forward, the more that we can actually see how our users are moving around and where they are, the more that we can actually work towards being much better than at this here in Denmark. For example, if just the thing about driving to competitions, if we can kind of use data to see where do we have our users and so on, so that we don't have to move users out to competition more than necessary, for example. That is just one thing, but there's a lot of things that we can do, and we are already working intensive with this, and this project is also just getting more data into that project as well, and getting them a better understanding on how our individuals, where they are, what they do, and so on and so forth, and also in terms of the stadiums, how can we optimize all of this? So it's very important, and it can definitely help us in that direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to your point, like having the data from previous events will allow you to plan better for future ones, capacities, which venue do you actually host this event in, based on how close it is to different zip codes or let's say areas, right? So plenty of things that you could do as long as the data is available. to who the decision makers and the planners, right? So
Exactly.
another question is, how does the conversation with the grassroots sports clubs look like in Denmark? What are their needs? Are they aware themselves of the importance of using data? And as volunteer-based organizations, which many sports organizations are they actually able to do it? Yeah, so maybe we can tackle, any aspect of it, Tina, but, we're talking a lot about smaller entities, and like, so how do they deal with it? What is your role as DIF versus maybe the role of the national sports governing bodies also?
Yeah, we have had, over the past years, we have had some kind of, we're having a trend forum where we have been looking into the grassroots sports, for example, the street sports, to see how are they organized, and kind of helping them to get grounded here in Denmark, because we see a lot of young people that they are actually they want to be a part of this street sport and some of the new sports that are coming out there, foot tennis or whatever. We have stand-up paddle. We have a lot of examples of these new sports. I am not that into these projects, but what one of the things that we have seen is, and that was also what I said about the content to the youth. Content is key, and it's about to for them to create an environment where the people want to be a part of it. And then if the surroundings and if the setup around the activity is also attractive, then they can attract the people. But everything seems to be, for example, on Instagram, on TikTok, all of these platforms where the young people are. And so they kind of use data to, not really using data, but they are attracting the people by making some activities that are attractive for them to be a part of. For example, some of them have these, here in Copenhagen, we have some street panna football and so on, and they have these set up where they kind of educate young people to take on teams and to get young people and teach them how to play the game and how to be a part of this, so that they have this whole community of volunteers, young people that they have educated into to be a part of this community. So and I really see that this, it seems to be a thing and a good thing to getting the young people involved, is to making a community around both this as being a coach, as you can say, but also being a volunteer in other different aspects of the activity, and then also the community around the ones who are actually participating. And yeah, of course, we hope that we can make this platform, because we need to be very much aware about the youth and how we can make this sports idea also to be attractive for them to use, because if we can't attract the young people, then we need to figure out how to do that, because they will be the parents in a couple of years. So we need to look into that and see. But as from what we can see now, they're very much building an environment where the young people want to be, and kind of having them engaging in the social media around that.
Fantastic. Tina, we're coming to the end of webinar today. Lots of great insights. If people participating would like to learn more about what DIF is doing and what's happening on the Danish side, let's say, of the data question, where can they go to find more information? What events or reports? You mentioned one or two, I think, in the discussion. Where can they look for more information?
yeah, of course we have our website, but we haven't. It's in Danish though. For now, we just released it. It's in Danish, but it gives some very good insights. But it is in Danish though. But I will have to look into the chat, because I think there are a lot of very good comments in there. And just say to everybody, please connect with me on LinkedIn. You can see my contact information on our website on DIFTK. And if you have experiences in working with data in some of your sports, then really please contact me. I would like to get to learn much more about how you guys are also doing it. And so don't hesitate to contact me. I would like to get in touch with you, both LinkedIn, email, whatever. And then I will we might get it translated into English, the report, but has some very good insights on what the Danish people want, at least.
Yeah. Which is it's an insight and learning for everybody, and one of the reasons also that DIF is one of the partners in the Change project. So as mentioned at the top of the webinar, we're recording today's webinar. We'll make it available in a few weeks' time online. We'll include a recap as well with relevant links, helpful documents that you guys can take a look at. And with that, Tina, I'd like to thank you very much. As mentioned to everybody, this is the first of several webinars. We're launching the Change webinar series, and we're looking for partners that wish to support the webinar series, that wish to support the project, that wish to be involved in the project. Yeah, so definitely we're looking forward to hearing from you. And as mentioned at the beginning as well, if you'd like to keep track of the project, please scan the QR codes, look at the links in the chat box, and connect with anybody that was speaking today, or with especially those with the Change background that you see on your screen. So with that, I'd like to thank you all very much. Tina, it was a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. Lovisa, thanks for the overview to get everybody involved in understanding what the Change project is. And we look forward to hosting you again in another webinar shortly.
Yeah, thank you guys.